The cave smelled of wet stone and old blood. Corporal Tadashi Nakamura, 19 years old, sat in darkness so complete he could not see his own hands. August 1945. The Pacific Theater is decided. 2 atomic bombs have fallen on Japanese soil. Hiroshima on August 6th, Nagasaki on August 9th. The Soviet Union has declared war on Japan and is moving through Manchuria with a force the exhausted Kwantung Army cannot stop. Casualty projections for a ground invasion of Kyushu, codenamed Operation Downfall, range from the hundreds of thousands to numbers planners struggle to justify. The war, in strategic terms, should be over, but strategy is not psychology. His name was Hirohito, and this is the story of what killing him would have done. In Japanese imperial ideology, Kokutai, the national polity, the emperor was not merely a political leader. He was not a commander-in-chief in the Western sense. The emperor occupied a position that fused temporal and sacred authority in a way that had no precise Western equivalent. He was, in the framework that had been embedded in Japanese education, military training, and national identity for generations, the living center of the Japanese world. Soldiers did not fight for Japan's territory. They did not fight for its government, which was fractious and internally divided. They fought for the emperor. The phrase that appeared constantly in military culture, Ishin Hokoku, serving the nation with one undivided heart, pointed not at an abstraction, but at a person, at him. At Hirohito. To understand the stakes, you have to go back to Corporal Nakamura in his cave, and to the hundreds of thousands of soldiers like him scattered across the Pacific. By August 1945, tactical defeats were comprehensive. The Air Force's primary doctrine was the kamikaze, the deliberate sacrifice of aircraft against American ships. Firebombing had leveled sections of Tokyo, but none of this produced surrender. Surrender was not a strategic calculation, it was a moral category. The only figure with the moral authority to tell a soldier that dying in a cave was no longer what honor required was the emperor. On August 15th, 1945, a recorded message was broadcast. It was Hirohito's voice telling the Japanese people the war was over. It spoke of enduring the unendurable, of bearing the unbearable, in order to open a new era of peace. But its meaning was unmistakable, and the response across the Japanese military was one of the most psychologically significant events of the entire war. Men wept. Officers who had planned to fight on the beaches of Kyushu with bamboo spears sat down on the ground and were unable to stand. Some soldiers refused to believe the recording was authentic and continued fighting for days, weeks, in isolated cases, for years. Hiroo Onoda would not surrender in the Philippine jungle until 1974, when his former commanding officer was flown in to formally relieve him of his duty. But the vast majority, the hundreds of thousands in the field, the millions in Japan itself, complied, not because they were defeated militarily, because the emperor had spoken. That singular fact is the answer to every question about why ending the war required what it required. Now hold that image in your mind. Hirohito's voice crackling through the radio, the soldiers weeping. And consider what happens if that voice is silenced. If, in the course of the atomic bombings or in some alternative scenario of escalating conventional bombing of Tokyo, the emperor is killed. The immediate consequence would not be surrender. The immediate consequence would be the removal of the only figure capable of producing surrender. The Japanese Supreme War Council was itself divided in the summer of 1945 between factions willing to pursue a negotiated peace and factions committed to decisive battle. What resolved it was the emperor's personal decision, on August 9th, 10th, to break the tie in the council and authorize pursuing surrender. Without him, the deadlock holds. A Japan without Hirohito in August 1945 is a Japan governed by a military council that cannot reach consensus and cannot produce the instrument of surrender that American forces need. It is a Japan where every soldier who has been told his life belongs to the emperor must now determine for himself what loyalty to a dead emperor demands. A dead emperor does not release his soldiers from their oath. If anything, his death transforms them into men with a new obligation, avenging him. American military planners had ordered the production of 500,000 Purple Heart medals in advance of the invasion, a figure so chilling in its specificity that it bears repeating. General Douglas MacArthur understood the Emperor's utility. He needed the Emperor to make the occupation function, and he got it, because the Emperor endorsed it. That voice was the weapon that ended the Pacific War, and the decision to keep it alive was the most consequential tactical judgment of the entire conflict. Corporal Nakamura walked out of his cave on August 16th. He laid down his rifle because the man he had organized his entire existence around had asked him to. That single act of a living God choosing peace over doctrine is the reason that what happened next was reconstruction and not annihilation. History does not remember the wars that were prevented. Sometimes the right decision is the hardest one, to spare the man who should perhaps have been made to answer.